It's time for another episode of The Oil Stream with Dustin Nielson and Tom Gazzola, presented by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Oil Stream. Nielson and Gazzola back with you once again. As always, The Oil Stream is brought to you by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen. You want to get your hands on some of the best damn chicken you're ever going to taste? Nothing says dinner on a Wednesday night like Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen. Get that Popeye's chicken sandwich. Over a dozen locations now, recently in Windermere, coming in St. Albert. And huge shout out to Kyle Furby and the crew over at Popeye's for everything that they do. And you can pick up those new Oilers packages as well. The meal that they've got there with the nuggets and the sandwich and the dips and the sides and the drink and Oilers puck. Jesse Puljujarvi right now. More players still to come. And hopefully Puljujarvi could get that puck put in front of the net and bang it in. Because he's been all over it, but he's in the middle of banging in a rebound just yet. Tommy, how are you, my man?
Nothing says dinner on a Wednesday night like Popeye's chicken. That old saying, right?
Yep.
Or it's a
everybody knows it.
If they don't, they will now when they watch and listen to this show. And yeah, at some point he's going to convert. I mean, he's getting the chances. And like you said earlier on the Smash Hit Nielsen show this morning, hey, he's around it, even though he's not the one putting it home, but he's around it. So that's a good sign. And as long as that continues to happen at some point, the law of averages says he's going to eventually score one again. He's
going to get a couple of those rebounds on the power play. I mean, like that one game. Remember that game he had, the 2 power play goals? It was just like boom, boom, boom. It's going to come again as the power play tries to sort of find their way. And we'll see what happens when they get healthy and maybe there's some additions. So we'll get to that. If you are watching on the live stream right now, feel free to subscribe to the podcast. We would love if you subscribe to the podcast. Just search The Oil Stream on all your podcasting platforms. If you have any questions, we can do that as well. And Dangle Dump is in. He texts into the Nielsen show as the sailor munching the data out in Hamilton. No. He says, I need to make the drive from Hamilton to Edmonton just to get those pucks from Popeyes. And you're right. You do. The pucks are cooler than the cups. The cups are pretty cool, but the pucks, they're pretty sweet. That's good.
They've had some good ones. Popeyes and Furby and the crew, like, pretty creative. And
they got a good relationship with the Oilers too, obviously, right? So
they do, yeah. Hey, Dangle Dump, like if only you knew somebody in and around the Edmonton area that might be able to send it to you.
Might be able to help you out there, buddy. Just
unless you really
send me a message. Here. Yeah,
I'm looking outside. It's snowing. I'm sure it is too in Hamilton, but maybe wait till like March. I don't know.
There's this thing called a mail where you can like put stuff and it sends it to other people's houses, which is
that's what that is.
Which is pretty awesome. Yeah. It's good. All right. Let's just get into the game last night. Not a bad start. You get to the second period, and there's this weird lull where they couldn't get anything. Like they went that stretch of 7, 8, 9 minutes at the beginning of the second where they didn't do much. They still finished this game with 50 shots, 9 of them coming in overtime, Tommy. But they fell behind again, and they kept coming again. I mean, I'll give them credit. Like throughout a lot of this stretch where they continually fall behind, and at this point, it's just a joke. It's just laughable. They have pushed after falling behind, and last night it paid off for them.
It did. 25 of 29 now that they have allowed the first goal of the game, and then 28 of the 38 games that the team has played. It is beyond ridiculous now. It's still pathetic. Very sad, and that's something that really does need to change, but it's in their head. Here's the thing on top of that, though, is the last 3 games, even the Florida game, like there's a noticeable difference in how the Oilers are playing. And I said it on the show this morning, they're hustling.
They're aggressive.
Hustle to pucks for once. And that's something that really they didn't even bother to do for the first 35 games of the season. And then the last 3, they had those good 3 practices where there was a lot of focus on battles. There was a lot of focus on hustling. There was a lot of focus on things like that, quick play. And it has shown itself. And part of it, yesterday we saw, and it was a welcome surprise. So if that continues, I think they'll be in a good spot. And at some point, I mean, they're not going to run into a Spencer Martin every night, right, Dusty?
How about that we're sitting here saying they're not going to run into a guy like Spencer Martin every night? And I thought Leon Draisaitl was going to break his stick base bat style over his leg in overtime because he had a number of opportunities there. Guy had 11 shots last night. And actually, I know he's one of the leaders of this group. I would have thought that we'd be having this conversation how, Connor McDavid has drugged this team out of a mess that they were in. And certainly, McDavid's been better the last couple of games. He's starting to produce again a little bit for sure, as far as his standards go. But Leon Draisaitl's really sort of put his head down and really been busting his balls. Even the Florida game, you mentioned it, Tommy. Like, they came out in that Florida game, they were aggressive in the first period, they're hard on pucks, they're going after it a little bit. And Draisaitl, who has a tendency to maybe let up sometimes like that, I think he's been, maybe it's just he's been extremely focused these last 3 games. Like, he seems to want the puck more than when things weren't going well.
Yeah, and I guess the noticeable thing about him is when you see the way he's getting frustrated or the way he's playing, trying to will this team to victory or to get them back into games, it kind of tells you about his level of competition, his determination, his commitment to the team. So, people are going to take their shots. Some point their shots towards McDavid and Draisaitl, and others critique us as media for not taking shots at them more. And, you can look to that and go, well, here's why. Like, this is one of the top players in the world, and he's got a team that's not doing anything, and he's putting it on his shoulders and almost, making it happen himself. And you could say the same thing for Connor McDavid. And this last little while is just an example of Leon Draisaitl. Like this, they're lucky to have these two guys. They're incredibly lucky. The fact that there has been limited results team-wise with these two on the roster is awful. I could use a bunch of different terms, but I'm just going to say awful. And it is frustrating for the fan base. And knowing those two guys a little bit more than most people, it pisses them off a lot. And they're committed to the city. They're committed to this team. And people questioning it, you could just point to what he did on the ice and say, really? Like, that's your argument, is they're not, or they don't try hard? Like, get real here.
We'll get to buy or deny for JiffyLube in a second. We got your Ken Morrison Remax question of the day that we'll get to as well. A couple other things that I wanted to discuss from that game last night. With the way that we've just seen them work overtime, usually when it wasn't Draisaitl out there to start overtime, it was with McDavid, Nuge, and Nurse, because then Keith came over as the second defenseman out. I thought that was kind of like, okay, let's see. They haven't done well in overtime. The results just haven't been there for them. They come out last night, outshoot the Canucks 9-1 in overtime. It seemed like instead of just allowing McDavid and Draisaitl to stay out as long as they want, get gas, quick breather, and then get gas the rest of the way, I like the way it worked last night. Like, you got Puljujarvi out there for a bit. You got Nuge out there for a little bit. You got Yama, who was going. He was out there for a little bit last night. I like the way that they rotated them through because McDavid and Draisaitl still were out there for a little bit at certain times, but they weren't out there the entire time. And I just thought they looked completely different in overtime last night.
Well, the key is those guys you mentioned that played alongside them in those shifts where McDavid and Draisaitl were split up. And you talked about Yamamoto going. Well, yeah, part of him going was his feet were moving. He was around it all night long. I thought he had a very good game.
I thought he had a great game.
And then on top of that, Nugent Hopkins had his feet moving. Jesse Puljujarvi had his feet moving. Those guys knew, like, there was an urgency to them, and they were skating. And it goes back to that working hard mentality. And those three were in that mindset, and it paid off. And it created all those chances, got them all those shots on net. I think that was a good sign. And then at some point you can mix in we'll get to him in a bit, mix in Zach Hyman, maybe a guy like Evander Kane at some point. And all of a sudden you have these great combinations with McDavid anchoring one and then Draisaitl anchoring the other. And then maybe you set it up if you're going late into OT where you do finally get those two out together. If you can arrange it. I think a lot of things have to fall in place for that to happen, but it was good. And the key, to me at least, for those other three players that we mentioned that played with McDavid and Draisaitl in OT was they were moving their feet. And Duncan Keith, I thought, had a pretty effective game as well. Yeah,
he was steady. I would agree with that. Nugent Hopkins back. He was practicing down the middle. They come out for the game. He's back up there on McDavid's wing. Yeah. You mentioned Yamamoto and Nuge. They were moving their feet. I didn't mind that line. I was a little surprised that Tippett. Well, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised that Tippett went back to it because he just has shown a lot of hesitancy to get to that third center down the middle with Nuge. And I think eventually his hand might just be forced here to go to it. But Tommy, what do you read into the fact that they practiced one way and then they played another?
I thought it was a bit of gamesmanship. When I saw the lineups in warm-up during the pregame show, I was like, Tip, sly dog. Maybe trying to throw a little wrench into the plans of Bruce Boudreau, who had a depleted lineup, like big-time depleted lineup. Yeah. And maybe Dave Tippett wanted to stack up the top two lines, and, it worked, I guess. But I feel like you and probably many others that this team, if it's going to truly have a solid top nine, it would probably be best to have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins down the middle on the third line. And then you get the argument from some fans. They're like, well, he's a $5.5 million player. What's he doing centering the third line? It's like, well, there are third line players that do make $5 million plus. And on top of that, Nugent-Hopkins, even though he might be the third line center, 5-on-5, if they're on the power play, guess who's out there? If they're on the PK, guess who's out there? If it's late in the game and they're behind by a goal or two, guess who's in the top six all of a sudden? It's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So I think it just brings balance to the 5-on-5. And, some people will make a bigger deal out of it than they should, and others might not make a big deal out of it. But it's a good thing when you have that kind of depth, especially down the middle, because, hey, man, I remember 2010 to 2015, we were all saying, wow, the Oilers have no centerman.
No centerman.
They've got some good ones.
At all whatsoever. Like none. Yeah. They didn't have any centerman that you could rely upon for a good stretch there. It was quite the scene. And for Nuge, you're right. Power play, penalty kill, key situations. Yeah. And then if he can establish a third line that is legitimate, that too is worth quite some value as well. Because all we sit here the whole time and go is, well, they got two lines. If Nugent-Hopkins can take some of these other guys and have a third line that you can play for 12 minutes a night or something along those lines, I think that goes a long way and provides some value there as well. So
I have a question. Kind of, talking about Nuge, looking down the road here, and if he ends up centering the third line, which is, might be an inevitability, but I've seen some stuff on Warren Foegele. I know Hernan asked me about it, like what I've made of Warren Foegele this season. And he's at 13 points through 38 games. He's on pace for his average of like 20 to 30 points. Why are people bringing up Warren? Are they upset with Warren Foegele, or am I just reading too much into this?
I think what some people thought is when... See, I don't get a vibe that people are upset with Warren Foegele. Yeah. I think what some people thought is that when he came here, he was going to have more opportunity than he had in Carolina, so you would expect a bump in production. But this just in, he hasn't had any more opportunity here than he had in Carolina. So that's why he's essentially producing at that same type of rate. And if you're a third-line player on the Oilers and you can give them 25 to 30 points in a season with zero power play time, I don't have a problem with it. Plus, he plays physical. He's a big guy. He moves well. He's defensively responsible. I mean, to me, Fogel's come as advertised. If he somehow got on McDavid's wing the entire season and is sitting here, disappointing people, then I get it. But that's not what it's been. Point. So, yeah, I don't get that.
I was just curious. I felt like I was missing something when it was brought up a couple of times, and I'm like, he's moonlighting in the top six right now. Like, don't get too excited. He might get a couple points here or there, but he's a third line left winger, a good one. And he's doing.
Did score that beautiful goal early in the season too. That was his first one with the Oilers, wasn't it?
Against Arizona.
Yeah, that was a nice shot. Yeah, that was good. All right, let's dive. We're going to reverse things today. We're going to go to JiffyLube, buy it or deny it for JiffyLube out in Morinville, 8805 100th Street out in Morinville. They're open Monday to Friday, 8 to 6, Saturday 9 to 4. If you need to get your oil changed, go to the JiffyLube in Morinville, especially if you're in that area. You're probably already going, but if you want to go out and support an Oil Stream sponsor, I'm sure Craig and his crew out there would very much appreciate it. Tommy, let's start here. We're going to have a few discussions around this guy, but let's start with this one. Evander Kane will be an Oiler by the time we do Friday's episode of the Oil Stream. Buy it or deny it?
By Friday. All right. I mean, all the indicators point to me buying it. And I had Irf Gafar on yesterday, and Irf has known Kane since his days as a Giant in Vancouver. And Irf was saying it sounds like he's going to be an Oiler maybe as early as today, tomorrow. But I buy it. And then the other thing too, Dusty, is you and I were talking about it a little bit, just texting back and forth.
Yeah.
His gear, his orange and blue Oilers stuff sounded like it was on its way to Rogers Place. And I sniffed around a little bit and I got the, yeah, it's on its way here.
Yeah.
And
his gear is either here or it's on the way.
Yeah. So it'd be just like his Oilers gloves and his pants. And some of those guys have like custom molded helmets and stuff. So a blue helmet. But it's entirely possible too that he had stuff shipped to, Washington. That's rumored to be another team he might be going to, but all indicators point to him likely ending up as an Edmonton Oiler. So I buy it. What about you?
Yeah, Friday. I guess the timeline is. Yeah, I'll buy it. I'm not going to say he's going to play immediately, but I'm going to buy it. I mean, I saw Dreger say they're expecting a decision to come down maybe tomorrow at the latest, and if that's the case, I think like the moment the NHL says, if he's not suspended, like he's on the ice practicing with the team ready to go as soon as they possibly can. So, the timeline might be a little sketchy for me, but I'll buy it. I think it might not be fully confirmed by them, but I think we'll all know 100% one way or the other by Friday. So
one other thing to note on that, as I think it was Dregs that put it out there, is he did meet with Tippett and Holland to discuss things. So you don't just meet with the coach and GM of a team for shits and giggles. Yeah, no, I would. I think we've all been leaning this way for a while, but I think it's just a matter of time until you get the ruling and it's going to be announced. Not 100%, but I'd be pretty darn shocked if he's not an Oiler, if he's not suspended. So we'll see how that one plays out. Maybe we'll have a huge Evander Kane episode on Friday. Who knows? The Edmonton Oilers should start Koskinen against the Preds on Thursday. Buy it or deny it? I will deny it. I think that they should go to Stuart Skinner, and there's a couple of reasons. First of all, good on Koskinen for putting together 2 strong games. They need that from him, and they need it more often. Now, when he's given the first netminder duties, he tends to slip up and fall after a few games. So here's a chance to give him a bit of a breather, collect himself, and let Stuart Skinner get back into game action, because they're going to need him, evidently, because we've got Mike Smith on LTIR. So give Koskinen the night off, give the night to Skinner. I deny it that they should give him the start on Thursday. I'm going to buy it. Oh, I know, but he's won 2 in a row. That save that he, what's that? So? Well, I don't know. The save that he made in the third period, and I was getting back and forth with a few people today because I didn't like the other 2 goals. Like, I sent out that tweet on his positioning. The moment I saw that first goal go in, I'm texting Gager. I'm like, buddy, I said, break this down for me because I don't think that should have gone in. And he goes, it's a bloody horrible goal, Dusty. And I went back and looked at it, and he's too far back in his net. There's no threat of a pass. He's not aggressive at all. His right leg, by the time he went down to make the save, was like outside his post. It was horrible. I don't want to blame a lot of goalies on a breakaway, but you also don't see a lot of goalies just straight up have the puck shot right under their pad with essentially no move. So didn't like the first 2, but he bailed out McDavid hard in the third to keep them in that. And with McDavid going and saying, he bailed me out on that one. And it was weird because Mott was going back the same place, and I don't blame him. And it even kind of looked awkward from Koskinen with the way he eventually sort of flopped out. But you make a good case for it. All the signs point to not doing it, but I'm going to buy it. I'm going to say you go back to him. But you make a good case for doing it. It's just in the time we've watched him, this is not a good scenario. We know that he flubs it up, so I would not be playing him. And what's funny? You bring up the thing about Gager and asking him about the positioning on that first goal. We were doing the same thing, Hernan and I, with Cass, and I'm like, Cass, was that just a really good shot, or was that poor gap control? Or should Koskinen have had that? He goes, hey, man, you got to give credit where credit is due. That was a laser. And CC's gap was okay. So Cass was giving Pettersson the benefit of the doubt, saying that was an absolute bullet credit where credit is due. And I was like, okay.
Then a interesting episode of Two Guys and a Goalie tomorrow. I'll just say that. Yeah, that'll be a good one. I'll stir that up for sure. I'll just sit back and relax. A lot of love in this city for this guy right now. Tyler Benson should be an everyday guy for the Oilers. Buy it or deny it?
I would like to see it as someone who's watched him come along, but I'll deny it. I think that the team is not better with him in the lineup. I appreciate and acknowledge his work ethic, him changing his style to make sure he's an everyday or an NHL player. I respect the hell out of that. I want to see him succeed, but I don't think him being in the lineup every night makes the team better. So I'll deny it.
Kind of torn on this one because when they've been missing Nuge and Hyman and stuff, I would have bought it. Like, I think he deserves to be in that group. But with Hyman coming back and who knows what happens with Evander Kane, a few guys are going to knock down that depth chart a little bit. So I would probably deny it. Have we seen Benson? He hasn't penalty killed at all. Hey, like has that ever been his thing? I wonder if he kills penalties, because if you're going to be a fourth line guy, which is when this lineup is healthy, he's a fourth line guy. Yeah. You're going to have to kill penalties or you're never going to play. And I'm not, maybe I know he's got the tenacity to do it and things like that, but I should have looked this up, but I'm not too sure if he has any experience doing that.
Something wants me to say that he did early in the season briefly, or maybe got a couple of looks there, but I'm not 100% sure.
Anyway, if you're watching on the live stream, buy it or deny it. What do you got with Tyler Benson there? All right, final one for buy it or deny it. Then we'll get to the Ken Morrison Remax question of the day. Chris Russell's return to the Oilers has saved the season. Buy it or deny it?
I'm going to buy it because it sounds so ridiculous, and I think it is ridiculous. But what it has done is brought stability to the back end. He's an upgrade over Slater Cuckoo. And I know Cuckoo's playing right now because of the Barry upper and lower body injury. But as soon as Barry's good to go, Cuckoo comes out. And Cuckoo's spot duty type of guy. He's number 7. I think they still need to improve that third pairing left side. But he's been good. So I'll buy it for the ridiculousness of it.
Yeah, let's fully buy it. Let's invest all in.
Yeah.
I don't, since he's returned, I can't remember being like, oh, damn, Chris Russell, that was brutal. And the guys who've stepped in and played for him, you said that quite a bit. It's weird to say, but he does stabilize the third pair. He really does. It might not be sexy or anything like that, but
it isn't.
But
it really is not.
It's kind of the truth, though. It's yeah. Well, there you go. Some love for Chris Russell after a couple of games returning here, and they get some victories. All right, so there you go. That's buy it or deny it for JiffyLube in Morinville. Let's get to your Ken Morrison Remax question of the day. If you're buying, if you're selling, support Ken Morrison Remax team. Remax Excellence, 780-993-4815. He's been a realtor for over 20 years, top 10 realtor with Remax. Tommy Gazzola, what do we got today for the Ken Morrison Remax question of the day?
All right, the Ken Morrison Remax question of the day is this, Dusty Nielsen. If that Evander Kane deal does come through and he is a part of this team, we're going to see Zach Hyman come back probably tomorrow night against the Nashville Predators. Add to the mix, you might have Dylan Holloway He's off to a good start down in Bakersfield. Give it some time. Don't rush it. Give him his 10 games. However, the question of the day is this. Say they get Kane, Hyman comes back, and Holloway continues to impress and finally does get the call up after 10 games. If you have those 3 players on your roster, Dusty, how are you building your forward lines?
I'm trying to do it right now. I'm looking at this right now. I'm going to probably ignore the fourth line. I'm just going to look at that top 9 with the 3 centers. So we start with, so we're playing this game. You've got Hyman, Fogle, Holloway, Kane, Yamo, JP. Those would be your 6 top 6 wingers, essentially, right? Unless you want to put Cassian in the mix.
No, you probably don't want to do that at this point.
Okay, so I would go Kane, McDavid, Puljujarvi. Even though I have in mind, Puljujarvi and Draisaitl, not bad in the offensive zone together there. I would go. Now, Holloway, does he only play the left side? Does he basically just play the left side?
Let's just, for the sake of simplicity, keep him on the left side here.
Okay, well, then I would go Holloway, Draisaitl, Hyman on the right side, and then Nuge between Yamo and Fogle. But there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. You asked the question, Tommy. What's going on in that little brain of yours there?
Not a lot. The monkey's smoking a cigarette, the one that cranks the wheels. So he's on a coffee break and having a dart. But I would go like this. I would go McDavid with Kane on the left and Hyman on the right. I'm moving Hyman over to the right side. And it's interesting because when the team rolled through Toronto, reading the articles out of the Toronto media, is they were saying that Hyman's better off on the right side and more comfortable there. And I was like, oh, I thought he was a left winger, but all right. So I would move Hyman to the right, have him on the top line with Kane and McDavid. And then I would go Draisaitl with Holloway on the left and then Puljujarvi on the right. And then like you, I would have Nugent Hopkins at center with Fogle in his true spot, left wing, third line, and Yamamoto, but because we're not counting the fourth line, but I might consider moving Yamamoto at the deadline for something and putting Cassian on that third line.
Holy smokes. I didn't expect to be diving into trade deadline proposals already too, but
Wow.
Yeah, but look, here's the reason we did this exercise. Mm-hmm. If Holloway is called up in 3 to 4 weeks or whatever, if they do get Evander Kane and he stays on track and stays out of trouble or whatever and fits in with the group, all that stuff, and you get Hyman back here, we know we're getting Hyman back here at some point. Tommy, all of a sudden, I mean, that's the best top 9 that they've had here in over a decade, and it actually gives you some legitimate options.
Yeah, it does. And then on top of that, you've got veteran NHLers fighting to get into the lineup on your fourth line. Like you're taking.
When you have McLeod, who's got to be in there somewhere too.
Exactly. So all of a sudden, it bumps all these guys down, and you've got guys fighting to stay in the lineup. And healthy competition like that, when it's crunch time, I think benefits a team. And so you could have a good situation. Now, a couple of things have to play out, obviously, if that scenario does come to fruition, but it's a pretty tantalizing thought, isn't it?
It is. It's kind of fun to sit here and think about possibly that team being there. All right, Tommy, what time do you get rolling tomorrow with the pregame show on TSN 1260?
I think it's just a standard 7 p.m. start, right? So, yeah, we just go at 6, straight up 1 hour, and myself and Connor Halley and Matty Cassian, and then the Latino Heat's back, baby. He was great last night. A lot of listeners were happy to have him back. I was happy to have him back. Huge thank you to Awanik and Connor for stepping up on the post-game show over the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, it's been good. It's been good. And let's see if the winning can continue. They're going to be in tough against Nashville. Let's not kid ourselves here.
I'm very excited to see this Nashville team, buddy. Like, I mean, they've been doing very well. I haven't had a chance to watch them much. I know they've got an excellent goaltender, and they've got some guys who are producing where I didn't think those guys could produce anymore. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But that should be a good hockey game. I hope it's a good hockey game at least.
Me too. I hope so.
Yeah.
Maybe the Oilers score first. I doubt it, but you never know.
One can dream, Mr. Gazzola. One can dream. That's going to do it for another episode of the Oil Stream. A huge shout out to Ken Morrison, Remax Excellence, JiffyLube out in Morinville, of course, and Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen, the presenting sponsor of the Oil Stream since the day we started it. So a huge shout out to Furby and the crew over at Popeye's, over a dozen locations now in the Edmonton area. Great for lunch, great for dinner, and to be honest with you, I'd eat that stuff for breakfast. Tommy, I'll talk to you on Friday, man.
Sounds good, Dusty. Looking forward to it.